Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from a very cloudy Oxford, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever in the world you are. And welcome to today's session, Oxford Leadership Dialogues. My name is Joe Parton. I'm a recruitment manager here at Side Business School. And from wherever you are in the world, you are very welcome to this session. This series of leadership dialogues is designed to bring together the Oxford Side community for thoughtful, senior level conversations about what it truly means to lead complex change at scale. Hopefully, this is not your traditional webinar, but a dialogue grounded in lived experience, reflective practice, and the realities of leadership in high complexity environments. That's what makes today's discussion particularly relevant. Today's discussion is leading at scale in Africa. Across the continent, we're seeing a significant growth in major programs spanning agriculture, education, health, infrastructure, public sector reform. And these programs are increasingly ambitious in scope and critical in their impact, but also shaped by complex stakeholder environments. And what is becoming clear in these contexts is that the challenges are not simply ones of delivery, but ones of leadership and navigating competing priorities, sustaining that impact over time. So, this is exactly what brings us to our session. And it's also one of the fastest growing regions represented across both our MSc and major program management and more broadly at Side Business School. So hopefully that's one of the motivations why you're attending the program. I am delighted to be joined by two alumni of our MSc in Major Program Management. They both bring deep practical experience of leading and shaping programs across the continent of Africa. Fanny Nkunika has built a career across social and community development, works at the intersection of government, policy, implementation in sectors varying from health, agriculture, and education. And Khalid Bomba, CEO of the and Managing Director of the Development Sovereignty Group. And he's been working on accelerating development across Africa, across various multi-country initiatives. Our aim is to have a dialogue or a discussion exploring the realities behind their work, leadership dilemmas, moments of complexity, and when judgment is required for operating at scale. So thank you, Fanny, Kelly, for your time today. We're very grateful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and so we can have a focused discussion. And I wondered if each of you could start off by introducing yourself. And one thing I forgot to mention, but hopefully is clear, is that both of you have completed our MSc in Major Program Management. And I'm interested a bit later on to explore the impact that that particular experience had on your work. So, Fanny, if we could come to you first, a brief introduction.
Thank you so much, Joe, and welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Fanny Nkunika. I'm a major program. I've worked in Africa, Malawi, in particular Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, based mostly in South Africa. But currently, I'm back to Malawi. I've also worked globally on other programs. Currently, my line of work is on supporting programs in various spaces. Currently, I work as director at Center for Program Performance. It is something that we started just to really support Malawi and neighboring countries for effectiveness and for impact. I went to Oxford looking for impact, and I'm very happy that I'm an alumni from there. And I'm also very happy that today we'll be sharing together. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Fanny. Welcome to the call. Khalid, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Joe, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Khalid Bomba, and I'm the CEO and Managing Director of Development Sovereignty Group, as Joe mentioned. My background is one that scans kind of many different sectors and many different geographies, beginning my career in investment banking, working in New York and in London at JP Morgan for 10 years, but then working in development sectors like the Gates Foundation and MasterCard Foundation, and then more recently focused more on agricultural development, agricultural transformation in Africa, starting with Ethiopia, where I was a CEO, and CEO of the Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Agency between 2010 and 2020. And since then, I've been replicating and adapting. I should actually say adapting and contextualizing what we did in Ethiopia to other countries like Sudan, Togo, and more recently to Uganda. So really happy to be with you and share with you some of my experiences and the work that we're doing at DSG, as well as how Oxford and the MMPM program have shaped that.
Perfect. Thank you to both of you. Khalid, I wonder if we could stay with you for question one and let's address the subject at hand. When you reflect on the programs you're currently leading and shaping, what feels fundamentally different about operating at scale in the African context?
Sure. So I think the biggest issue that we're increasingly facing is one of, I guess, the need to adapt to challenges that occur almost on a daily basis. These challenges in the past have been very operational, very micro-oriented. But now it seems like every few years we have big, huge issues that crop up, be it COVID or the war in Ukraine, or now the war in around Hormuz. So whenever these kinds of big issues happen, they have knock-on effects in every part of the world, in every sector. And when you're trying to implement a major program on the continent of Africa, which usually requires the collaboration of public sector, private sector, civil society, local partners, as well as federal level partners,
We might have some connection issues with
Yeah,
Harry. Apologies to everyone, which is a shame because it was an incredibly
yeah.
thought-provoking answer to start with. Okay,
is important.
we, we lost you for a moment, but I
Uh-huh.
think you're back.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. I think, Fanny, if we could come to you to build on some of those points. From your experience across health, education, agriculture, the programs that you've worked on, where is there a moment where translating policy into implementation has proved more complex than you expected?
Very, very much so. So I would just give a context to Malawi for other people maybe who don't know Malawi, and so that they can appreciate. So Malawi, for instance, for example, 70% of the people are living under the poverty line, and our budgets, for example, in education, are heavily funded by donors. So you have a budget of maybe 40% heavily funded by donors. You're talking of education, health, and agriculture. Now, you find now what Karid already said about the changes that we never anticipated or expected. So, for example, last year when I was on a major education program trying, to support Malawi, where we have like 87% poverty, literacy poverty, that means 87% of learners are not able to read at age 10. So that is like a very complex problem. But you find that all that funding was taken away. USAID funding was cut in a brink of a day, in a day. By 20 January, all that was cut. Now, as a major program leader, what do? You are looking at these challenges. You have these learners, you have schools open, you have hospitals. So what do you really do? The learners cannot go back. They have to continue. So the complexity that Khalid is talking about, that as leaders you need to adapt and think and see how do we move on from here when things like funding are cut are a reality in our space. So it is not just leadership as normal, but it is really leadership that is adapting, leadership that is impactful, and leadership that is making a difference.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And back to Khalid. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is aligning stakeholders. And programs in Africa sit at the intersection between public, private, many different actors and stakeholders. Thinking about your programs, what have been the most critical leadership challenges when it comes to aligning those different stakeholders?
So I think the biggest challenge typically is within the public sector. And I've worked most directly in the public sector, although I've also come from the private sector, and that's aligning internally within the public sector. If you're doing a major program in an area like health or agriculture or education that spans across sectors, ensuring policy alignment and leadership across all these sectors is super difficult. But then ensuring that the policies are incentivizing the right types of activities from the private sector, ensuring that the public sector is listening to the private sector, because ultimately, to get sustainable impact on the African continent, you need private sector development. But unfortunately, the public sector and private sector often don't speak the same language. The private sector, in many cases, is looking for short-term gains and short-term profit, whereas the public sector is solving for, of course, immediate impact because they need to get elected, but that long-term strategic structural change that will bring about impact. So there's almost a disconnect in the language and what people are solving for when it comes to public and private sector. And then there's, of course, the funding gap that exists in many development projects. The funding gap that typically is filled by the USAIDs and the philanthropies of the world that now is becoming less and less available. So what do you do in that environment where you have a big funding gap that the public and private sector can't meet? So it's those types of issues that you need to constantly be solving for and trying to optimize the limited amount of budget that you have to show immediate impact, but also long-term goals are met.
Honey, I know you've worked in, well, you mentioned it yourself, situations where that funding has been cut and you've faced challenges like that. So do you have anything to build on Khalid's points there?
Yes, I want to build on Kali's point, but also talking around. So he talked at least the divide between the private and the public sector, but I want to narrow to something like maybe just the public sector. So I worked on a program in South Africa, 2016 to 2018. It was social accountability and it had many sectors. So it had agriculture sector, it had the health sector, and then it had like 5 consortium members. But on top of that, it had 5 groupings. And that's where my interest is to share the leadership dilemma. So we had like parliamentary committees, so chairs of parliamentary committees, and then we had stakeholder farmers. All these 2 were our targets. We had CSOs, media, and government departments. And the major leadership challenge that came was when it came to prioritization. So, for example, we would have limited budgets that we have to deliver with, but then they would say, okay, maybe we have a training in Johannesburg. But the stakeholder farmers would say, we want you to come visit one of our farms, maybe in Tanzania. So you would now see, how do you now balance that? Because all these are stakeholders. So how do you choose which direction or which voice to hear? Today, if I was in the same shoes, then I know we used just to manage by maybe negotiating, but now having learned about maybe mapping, about stakeholder mapping interest and power, I know how probably I could have gone about that. But those were things before the MPMM that I didn't know. I just had to make sure that I work something around and have the program going. So to Karit's point, to really put together the different complexities of leadership leading various groups, it becomes very difficult because it has to be a win-win for all stakeholders.
Absolutely. When I think about alignment, which has been a big theme of what we've spoken about, hand in hand with alignment is building trust. Both of you work across the public and private sector, but also across different countries within the continent. So, what methods or lengths have you gone to build trust in environments where perhaps incentives or priorities have not aligned?
So maybe if I can jump onto that question, what we've always, goodness, did I freeze again?
No, no, you're still with us.
No, no.
You can hear you loud and clear. Okay, maybe now.
Yeah, maybe now you're frozen. But I would I would give a very quick example of what happened. So I worked with a regulatory authority, and training skills development was one of our key things that we needed to do. But the thing was that we were collecting a levy. So we collected a levy from companies, and they in turn had to train. Some wanted to train, some did not want to train. And we also had like conditions for them. And we realized that we are not in their companies. We are an authority outside. We are a major program outside of their own working. And so it was very difficult. Mostly they did it for compliance, and we saw that the results were not coming. Up until we started having like genuine discussions, genuine meetings where you meet and really hear. And it was very interesting to find that sometimes people backed off, not because they did not want, but the fear of should they think that we do not know. So people would just, you call for meetings, they're not showing up, you do this, they're not doing things with you. But when we started genuine discussions and listening to people and going, visiting them, we saw that it made a very big difference in the sector. And the change now started being led by the companies. The companies now started demanding for the change. We want this, rather than the step where we were just supplying as an authority, a government parastatal to offer services. So one thing is build genuine dialogues, speak to the people, reach out to them and let them understand that you're actually all of you building something together for all of you. It helps in building trust.
Absolutely. Communication, building dialogues, really, really important. It's great to see so many people online as the discussion is going on. The Q&A function is open. So I just wanted to invite any of you that wanted to ask a live question to our panelists. You're able to do that, and I'll try and thread it in. Khalid, I think you're back with us. Over to you on the alignment and building trust with competing
Sure.
priorities.
Sorry about that. My internet is a little bit unstable today. But there's actually a couple of things that we try to do very intentionally and proactively in building trust in the programs that we design. The first is to always be evidence and data driven. When we can back up any recommendation that we're making with a whole host of evidence and how we got to our recommendation in a very logical way, it brings confidence. And secondly, is the willingness to change your mind based on new evidence and new data. Willing to adapt to a changing circumstance and saying, hey, maybe that wasn't the right way to do something. Let's go this direction, shows that you are ultimately interested in the facts and in results rather than dogma, being political, or just being right. So I think those are the two things that have helped us in building the credibility when we implemented the Ethiopia program and be invited in other countries to adapt that program to their contexts.
Really important, yes. And being reactive to the data and not resting on assumptions, I think, is one of the reasons why programs get scaled. And that's the next theme that I wanted to touch on. The title today is Leading at Scale in Africa. Each of you have scaled projects and programs. So there's, I think, a contest between scaling, rapid delivery, but then long-term impact and sustainability. So how have you grappled that when you're thinking about the need for long-term sustainability, maybe institutional strengthening of a project versus actually the need to scale it quickly? I'll let the
Well,
question sit with you. Over to you, Khalid.
I was going to say that, the project that we worked on in Ethiopia reported to the prime minister, and all he cared about was the delivery of results. He didn't care how we did it, how sustainable they were. He just said, get stuff done. And initially, we did everything directly ourselves because that was the easiest way to get things done and to scale it up. We, grew the organization from 0 to 600 people in 5 years in order to implement everything. But we realized that that was not sustainable, nor was it scalable. So we shifted our model in year 5 towards one of building capacity of other partners to actually execute projects that we piloted. So we came up with this model of the organization would pilot projects in parallel or in coordination with the ultimate owners of a project. We would build our capabilities and we would help them resource mobilize and then support them and serve as scaffolding while they scaled up a project. So more and more we went to this other model where we would support others to execute rather than execute directly ourselves.
Thank you so much. Fanny, from your experience, do you have anything to add?
Yes, there is something very interesting that actually surprised me. So I recently had work on the Malawi 2063 strategy, and one of the strategy areas is tourism. And it was very interesting because previously we pointed fingers, a lot of fingers at tourism ministry that, hey, we want planes to come to Malawi, for people to come, we want aviation, we want, like, there were so many demands we were making as a system and at that large scale, only to realize that the mandates, the policies we are talking about, so the Ministry of Tourism would have their mandates to push for tourism. But aviation will be another ministry, transport, when they decide that we are going to go to this place and we are going to make sure the road is good for tourists, that is a different decision. For the Reserve Bank, immigration to grant visas and so on, that is completely different. So we realized that we looked at delivering at scale, like we just want this to be done well, but we had not thought of the mandates. I remember one of the mandates was with the forestry department was that when trees are mature, they should cut, but the tourism ministry was like, no, we want trees for people to come and appreciate. So you would see those kind of, like, everything is working for the country, the mandates, the policies, but the crashing of policies sometimes, the crashing of mandates, and what Khalid talked about, that sometimes people just want to be right, everyone wants to push. So you are one country, you want to push, but as you're pushing, you realize that your different interests and conflicts, by the end of the day, are actually affecting the very strategies you're pushing for. So that's one interesting thing that I recently encountered. Yeah.
Really interesting and a hidden challenge that perhaps people wouldn't think about, those competing priorities between different stakeholders is really, really interesting. I wonder when we think about scale, we think about doing things quickly. Was there a time where actually slowing down or taking a different approach led to a better outcome in one of your programs?
I mean, I guess I can go again. When we were implementing at ATA in Ethiopia, the model that we're trying to replicate across the continent, initially we were implementing a series of different standalone projects. It was only 5 years into it that we integrated them into a national program. Now, those individual projects that we were implementing, every year and every project, we learned something. Not only from a content point of view, but also from a project management point of view. And initially, this was all kind of learning by doing. But of course, once I did the MMPM, I was like, oh, there's actually a logic behind this, and there's a science. It's not just an art, but there is a science to how you design and implement projects. And one thing that I actually took from the MMPM is to have an initial pilot that's successful before you scale it, something modular, right? And in the MMPM, Professor Freiberg used to talk about, what is your Lego? What is your Lego? What is your replicable unit of measurement? And I never had thought about that, but that's something that always stuck with me. And I'd think in the projects that we're implementing, which is the piece of this that is scalable, that is replicable, and what parts of it are the ones that you've got to adapt for different contexts. And I think that's one of the biggest learnings that I took away from the MMPM, as well as from our just learning by doing, is when you're thinking about scale, you have to think about the replicable versus non-replicable pieces and be very clear about them. And then, just like a Lego, build piece by piece as you go to scale.
Made it sound so simple. All this complexity made sound really, really straightforward. But that's a very powerful reflection, both of your experience and also of the program. And that's a good gateway, perhaps, into bringing the MSc into the fore. So both of you have completed the MSc, but at one point you were considering it, and you were at a stage in your journey where you thought this would be worthwhile. Maybe starting with you, Fanny, at what point did you realize that just day to day doing your job might not be enough and you needed some sort of additional academic frameworks? What led you to consider taking the MSc?
Yeah, so I had, like Karid had said, I had done a number of things myself. I did economics, I did management, I did other programs, but then the the mastering of major programs, like really critically looking at the issues that I was faced with, for example, with the context in Malawi and the practical issues that we face every day, I realized that I needed something that was to challenge me, and I needed something that was going to help me. So one key takeaway for me from Oxford was that just how it helps you to think out of the box, but also to think critically. So you are not just thinking linearly. It is even when you're finishing class, it's when like you're starting to think. So the thinking out of the box thinking for me is what led me to consider coming to Oxford to say, no, I am managing programs, but how come our, okay, even up to now, our poverty is still 70%. But every time people are implementing, how come we moved from 50% poverty line to 70% poverty line? And the other outcomes in education, despite money being pumped into this education system, why are things not really changing? And I thought, okay, maybe we need to think in terms of systems, like how do we put systems together? Like I just gave an example of tourism. How do we put systems together so maybe we can think together and move? What workarounds do we use to probably navigate some of our issues? Because sometimes the issues of political will, sometimes the issues of decision making, and power. So how do we navigate all those kind of things? And at that point, I said, let me go explore the MMPM at Oxford, and I'm very happy that I went through that program. It changed a lot. It transformed me. It is not just the intellect, but I think it has transformed the way my view about life and my view about people.
Thank you. And in a moment, Fanny, I'm going to ask you about the focus of your dissertation in particular, because I think that was particularly relevant for the programs you're working on. But before that, Khalid, you've already given us a wonderful takeaway from your time on the program. I wonder, what was your experience of taking the program while still being involved day to day in these programs and projects?
It was fantastic. And it actually, I wrote my dissertation on the program that I was designing and about to launch. And in fact, many of the design features of the program itself were affected by the MMPM. Some of the governance frameworks that we put in place come directly from the frameworks that I learned about in the MMPM. So for me, it wasn't just a let me learn about some interesting facts. It was very hands-on, practical things that I put into place immediately as I was learning about them, and ultimately wrote about them in my thesis for the MMPM.
Could you just build a little bit on practically what elements of that dissertation and going through that project allowed your program to succeed? Can you pinpoint particular aspects of that process that led to success?
Sure. Sure. So one thing that our program always had was a governance system that was very top down. Like I mentioned before, it was led by the prime minister, and we report to him. And we use the prime minister as the lever to get everything done. As a result of the MMPM, I realized that that might not be the most sustainable and best way to do a major program management, and built in other governance structures, some soft power, some more coordinated kind of bottom-up approaches that gave ownership to more people and governance responsibilities to other people in different parts of the program. as a design principle. But before that, it was all very top-down leadership and governance structures.
Fascinating. Yeah. Encouraging you to rethink, just like you said earlier, not resting on an assumption of how things should work, but radically rethinking how they should. Fanny, if we could return to you reflecting on your dissertation in particular, what did you focus on and what was the impact that project had?
Yeah, so I focused on applying systems thinking to public and private sector governance. And this has had a lot of impact because whilst I went through, I realized a number of frameworks. There was a framework by Brunet, which really talked around accountability, legitimacy, and just really being there, effectiveness. And I realized that okay, we had that framework, yes, accountability, legitimacy, and effectiveness, but I added something that was done by Professor Daniel. It was sensing, scaffolding, and scoping. So it was that have governance frameworks, but the frameworks themselves are not going just to move things. You need to be able to look at issues of decision making. You need to be able to scope. You need to be able to move. So whilst you have governance frameworks, you also need things that are going to push forward things. And when I went to the field and spoke to the people, I realized that answers, people have the answers, but sometimes maybe it's where to start from and apply these things.
Mhm.
So through my dissertation journey, it was very eye-opening to me, but at the very same time, really to say that things that we study, the systems thinking as we do it in class, it's just like, but when you really think of things as systems, it's when you start to understand that that is the only way probably that you can move in policy and impact and really change issues in places like in Malawi.
It's so encouraging to hear the impact that focusing on these dissertations has had on each of your projects. Another aspect I'm sure you both experienced on the program was meeting your cohort, and our cohorts normally represent the entire world. So you were both coming into the program as experts in your own region. What was the impact of meeting classmates from different sectors and regions? And then the broader question would be, if you were consulting someone running a major program in Africa, what could they learn from how things happen in other parts of the world?
Fanny, do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I can go first. So for me, one thing is that I always really talk about is I always talk about that when I came to Oxford at first, my major attraction was the university and maybe the knowledge and the wisdom. But when I went to Oxford, actually, I was very surprised. To start with, actually, maybe this might not be the forum, but I remember that even before I joined Oxford, just the support. I remember I had a certain deficit and I had written the university that I'm not coming. And someone who I had never met said, you cannot miss a director's award. And they went and they paid fees. That allowed me to attend Oxford. If it was not for that person, I was not going to attend Oxford. So something life changing, life transforming like that taught me a lot of things and challenged me. Every day I'm challenged what impact I am making to other people. So I feel from Oxford, I brought tools and lessons that are now challenging me as I face outward my community, the many girls I meet every day that need someone to look up to and just encourage them. The many, like the many things that I face every day. So for me, Oxford, the people, the transformation, the support system, I think that is one key takeaway for me. And I encourage those that are applying, come to Oxford. It's a network of very amazing people. And I think that what sets Oxford apart.
Very inspiring. Thank you so much, Fanny. Khaled, anything to add from your experience relating with your classmates on the program?
Sure. And I think that's the part that for me was somewhat eye-opening. And what makes the MMPM very different from other master's programs is the fact that it's a mid-career program that has seasoned people, and I was a little bit on the older side, but there are people between 35 and 50 years old who have been working for 10, 15, 20 years who have a ton of experience, practical experience. And I actually learned a great deal from the stories that they told and the challenges that they encountered, as I did from the academic frameworks that were put on the board. Because you learn a lot from how people solve problems, how people navigate issues that they encounter that are unexpected, that doesn't have a framework around it, right? So for me, that was part of the best experience, was just having a drink with somebody, or during a joint case study, thinking through a problem, and the perspective that somebody from Ecuador brings is very different from something that I bring, from something that somebody from Germany brings. So those conversations ended up being really, really interesting and insightful for me.
I think you've said something that's echoed so many times. People think that they come to Oxford to learn about the academic frameworks, what's written on the board. That's absolutely true, but in reality, it's what you learn from the people either side of you, which I think is really profound. Thank you. Um, we've had a question, thank you very much, which is, as major programs continue to expand across Africa, what leadership capability do you think will be most important for people leading those programs over the next decade? Or maybe more than one.
So if I would go back to the first point that I made, which is all about adaptive management. The ability to look at a particular project that you're implementing and then have to adapt to a situation that you encounter out of nowhere, be it due to domestic political issues, funding issues, geopolitical issues. How do you adapt? How do you keep your project on track when something completely unexpected that you didn't plan for throws a wrench in your works? And I've found that, those that are willing to lean on evidence and data and not necessarily feel like change tracks, and willing to find out of the box solutions to keep their projects on track. So for me, adaptive management ends up being the number one thing that I think is important from a leadership perspective, and for major programs in Africa.
Thank you. Adaptability, adaptive management, a great takeaway. Fanny, what about you?
For me, it is people management. In an era where we are having AI coming in, lots of solutions, lots of things that seem almost to be competing with people, I think that one of the main capabilities would be really, how do you manage people? How do you understand people and work with them and really work out things together with them? For me, that would be the thing.
Excellent. I mean, combining those two together, and we have and a very effective strategy. We've spoken a lot about the complexity of these programs, the complexity of the world that they are happening in, and the increasing uncertainty that's happening. From your experience successfully leading and scaling these programs, what gives you confidence about the future of large-scale program delivery across Africa? What makes you feel optimistic? Because there is undoubtedly an immense amount of opportunity, perhaps more so than other regions of the world. What is your cause for optimism or confidence for these programs moving forwards?
Okay, I'll go again first. I think my source of optimism, at least on the African continent, is the ingenuity of the young people. We in Ethiopia, for example, had a training program very similar to a program that McKinsey, BCG, Bain, these major consulting firms run. And the entry exam very similar to what they would offer. And we gave that same exam to graduates of Haramaya, Addis Ababa University, local universities. And these kids ended up doing as well as kids that were graduating from Harvard and Yale and Oxford. And we thought to ourselves, why is this happening? And realized it's because African young people are having to solve problems every single day. Every single day, you're having to solve some kind of issue or some kind of problem. As a result, a problem-solving mindset is part of the way that many young people in Africa think. And that problem-solving mindset, at the end of the day, is the core building block of major programs. You're trying to solve a big problem. You're trying to solve a big, complex, messy issue with many different stakeholders. And I believe that if you give the tools, the frameworks, the knowledge to the young people on the continent to solve big problems at scale, that they can do it. It's just access to that information. And that's why I'm really thrilled to see Oxford MMPM program expanding its work in Africa and having more African students there, because access to the knowledge, the networks that Oxford provides allows these African young people to come back to the continent and solve many of the problems that we have, but they are already trying to solve without all of the tools necessary. So with those tools, I'm confident that many of Africa's problems can be solved.
Wonderfully optimistic and really practical as well. Thinking again in the small, these are people that can solve small problems regularly. It naturally translates into solving big problems. I think that's absolutely fantastic and a cause for real excitement. Fanny, what could you add when you think about optimistically looking forward for major programs in Africa?
Yeah, to add to Khalid's point, he talked about young people. And when you look at the statistics, for example, I say like in Malawi, 70% of the population are 30 years and under. And if you think of such a population, 70%, and as it talks of them accessing maybe knowledge and creativity, then that already tells you that that is a game changer. But also Africa as a continent has a lot of potential. A lot of minerals coming up, a lot of areas, energy. There's a lot of potential for investment. So in all different sorts of things, natural resources, and so on and so forth. So I think Africa is the next hub actually for bigger and greater things. So there is so much Africa can offer, and the more that it offers, the broader that the whole world will really gain from it, because it's open. So yeah, that's what I can say.
I completely agree wholeheartedly. And in my role as recruitment manager for our MSc and Major Program Management, I'm happy to report that almost 1 in 3 of the hundreds of applications we received last year were from people based across Africa. And that is growing year on year. And so there's a clear appetite. We've had a question submitted, which is quite timely based on the previous answers you gave. For professionals looking to get involved and work in Africa, do you have any suggestions on where to start? And I think this relates to, in particular, engaging or perhaps even investing in programs across the continent. Where's a good place for them to start?
I can start and maybe Khalid can follow. I think it's the same thing around networking. In my class, it was very amazing. People will just have a casual discussion. Oh no, I want to go to Saudi, and they're discussing, oh maybe there's this and that. And people, as you're networking, discussing, you find that what you're looking for is probably what someone wants to offer. So as you join the program, you get the good network that you can already start talking to people. But also Oxford has a good career center. So for example, you might join yes as a student and you want maybe to branch off to work in Africa or something like that. The careers center has dedicated people that are really there to work with students, help with their CVs, help with their qualifications and how they lay it out and so on. So maybe in a nutshell, I can say I feel that Oxford provides support in terms of maybe the the paperwork and whatever that you might have. But also I feel that the people themselves that you interact with, that you meet, that you might not normally meet if probably you were not in that space. In Oxford, we get to really meet that a lot. So for me, I think that's how I really saw people doing a lot. But other than that, maybe Khalid, you can add other practical things that you have also experienced.
Sure. No, thank you, Fanny. And just building on your point, I think we've got to recognize that trying to implement a major program in Africa is not easy. It has many different challenges, many issues. As a result, I think if you do want to get involved in a major program in Africa, choose something that you really care about, that you're really passionate about. Because no matter what program or project you're working on, you are going to face frustration at some point. And if it's something that you care about, then you dig in. Then you find a workaround. Then you find a solution. But if it's something that you just happen to learn about and seems interesting, then you'll get discouraged very quickly and really won't see it through. But if you have a vision, if you have a problem that you really want to help solve, that's the one that I think you go and find people who are working in it and say, hey, look, here's my experience. Here's what I can do. Here's what I've done. How can I get involved? Right? So start with your area of interest and passion.
Excellent advice from both of you. Hopefully that helped to the attendee that asked the question. We've had another, which is a very interesting one. First of all, this person thanks you for sharing your insights, each of you. The question is, are you the initiators of your project? And what brought about the essence or genesis of the projects? How did your projects start? Fanny, can we start with you?
Yeah, so for me, for Center for Program Performance, yes, I'm the initiator, and it's a partnership of two people. The other one is also an Oxford-based person. But how it started was really for me, really going through the program, coming out of the program, and really wanting that what I experienced should really go out to private sector, to public sector. And I remember we did the needs assessment to see is there really need in Malawi for this kind of thing? And we saw that there was need in Malawi. And we wanted something practical leadership programs that way practical, that you do a program tomorrow you can apply, but of course with some rigor, with something that is going to make impact. So two things we are looking for: impact and practical. So yes, for my one, yes, I was the initiator of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Fanny. Khalid, how about you? Were you the initiator and how did your programs begin?
I was, well, it began with a request, right? So the program began from a request by the Prime Minister, who basically said, tell me how you're going to double the income of 5 million farmers in 5 years. How are you going to do that? We need to do this. Come up with a program. So it started with the end, and then we had to build a program to get to that end. It's almost like build me a new nuclear reactor, and then you've got to figure out how to build it, right? So we had to build a program to double the income of 5 million smallholder farmers in 5 years. And then what we designed, it took us almost a year to design it after discussing with public sector partners, private sector partners, civil society, local stakeholders, was a program that had nearly 60 different interventions or sub-projects that fed into almost like a system of systems to this one ultimate goal that the Prime Minister wanted. So it came from a request, but we designed a program to meet that request.
A very ambitious and big request, and it's very admirable that you have achieved that, which is very wonderful. I'm conscious of allowing a few minutes at the end of the session just to run through details of the program for anyone that feels compelled to follow in your footsteps. I wonder if we could start to close out the session. There'll be people on this call that are very interested in following in your footsteps and interested in this program. But I'm aware from my role that many people exclude themselves, imposter syndrome, put barriers in place. So think back to before the program. How would you encourage someone working in a similar region or sector to you to take that step and remove the barriers in place and realize that actually Oxford is attainable? How did you overcome any barriers in applying yourself?
I think I would start. For me, I just took a leap of faith. When I decided that I was going to do, I remember they had said we should put 7.8 deposit and it writes non-refundable. That scared me for a bit. I'm like, what if I do and it's non-refundable? And I thought about it and I waited, I thought about it. Then I just decided. I said, I want to make a difference. I really want this skill set. I'm happy with these modules. I'm going to go for it. So the first thing is you have to tell yourself that you want, and you have to really feel that you want. When you reach that level, just keep going and move forward.
Thank you. Just do it. Keep going. Move forward. Make a brave decision. Khalid, how about you?
Just building on Fanny's point, I think the biggest question for me was one of time. Is this the right time to do it? And when you're kind of in the middle of implementing a project, in the middle of your day-to-day work opportunity, many have family responsibilities. You think to yourself, maybe not this year, maybe next year. There's never a perfect time, right? That's what I learned, is that there is never a perfect time to do something like this. And it's a leap of faith. You've just got to say, now is the time. I've got to do it and, commit to it. So very much like Fanny said, you've just got to do it, right? Recognizing that this is going to supplement whatever you're doing. And there is that kind of imposter syndrome side to, it's Oxford. Am I good enough?
Mhm.
What do I bring to the table that all of us had? But what you realize is the more unique your experience, the more value you bring to the classroom discussion, right? The more
Absolutely.
you think that I don't have something to add is when you actually have something unique to add. So I would turn it on its head and say, the more you feel that you might not have something to contribute, the more likely it is that you have something unique to contribute. So like Fanny said, just do it. Just apply. Once you get in, you make that decision. If you get in, you make that decision rather than excluding yourself from the beginning.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm going to double down on your point. That is true of being on the program, Khalid. If you think you have nothing to contribute, that's exactly a reason why you would be able to contribute. That's true also of an application. When the admissions committee are looking at applications and deciding who would add value to the class, think about how disruptive your experience or your thinking would be to others, because it is true that there are many participants, particularly from what we might describe as, I don't know, more traditional or predictable markets and sectors that you'd expect to join a business school, that are attending deliberately to disrupt their perspectives and their thinking. So you could be the person who causes that disruption in a good way. Thank you so much to both of you. There's one more question we've got time for. And it's a topic which is very important, and actually we haven't assessed it, so I'm glad that we are. This participant is asking, how do you cope with the political and economic instability prevalent across Africa and other emerging markets that impact major programs? So thinking back to the regions and the programs that you have um, uh, been involved with, political, economic instability, how have you overcome those challenges? Khalid,
I
I'll
can
start
go
with you.
first if you'd like. Yeah. Okay. So for me, I actually had to work on my project with three different prime ministers. So that political uncertainty and change is something that I dealt with constantly. And when people ask me this question, I tell them that what saved my project and the organization was delivery. Delivery. Just deliver. Every single leader wants a project or a program or institution that delivers. That is the thing that's going to save you more than your network, more than your relationships, more than any partners, is the ability to deliver. And if you can deliver at scale, no matter what changes happen, you survive. But if you can't deliver, at some point, people are going to say, is this worth it? Is this really what we want to put time and energy behind? But if you do deliver, you'll always have backers and supporters.
Thank you so much. Very clear and very positive advice. Fanny, what's your advice to navigating political and economic instability?
For me, it's really around stakeholder management. It feels like a word that has been repeated and repeated, but it is a word. Approach the politicians, approach whoever stakeholders are there, even if you may feel like it feels like maybe they're not on your part, but the more that you engage them, collaborate, work with them, tell them the same things, show them what you're doing, deliver, as Khalid has said, the better it becomes. They might not be there for you. Like sometimes there's what word is it? There's a way you see resistance, but the more that you continue to engage, talk to them, present your plans, present your reports, present your plans, especially for government, maybe government donor programs, the more that they eventually come in and work with you.
Thank you. Hopefully that would provided some insight to the person asking that question. And I think that brings us nicely to the end. Where we have just a few minutes left, and I'm going to share some details to conclude about this MSc that Khalid and Fanny have spoken so positively about and the impact that it's had on them. I just wanted to take a moment again to thank you so much for your perspectives. I've really enjoyed exploring leading at scale in Africa and learning from both of your perspectives, and I'm sure everyone that's attended the call has done too. This session has been recorded in full, and everyone that registers will receive the recording. So if you joined late or if you missed part of it, you can catch up on the recording. But I'm just going to share again some details about how you can get involved. It might be that the program is already on your radar. It might be that you've already started or indeed submitted an application. But whatever stage you are, I just wanted to show a quick reminder of the process. This is what stands between you and saying that you are an Oxonian and bringing your perspective to the classroom. In particular, I'd like to highlight that we are recruiting for our next cohort starting in September of this year, and the next application deadline is Monday, the 1st of June. So there's a little bit of time for you to gather all of the materials together, and hopefully that's a realistic deadline to aim for. And most importantly, my role, I have the great privilege of overseeing recruitment for this program and meeting some very wonderful participants, two of whom have showcased themselves so wonderfully on today's event. I would be delighted to personally assist any of you with your inquiry, discuss your candidacy, support you through the application process. That is my contact email address. You can also follow that QR code for the opportunity to submit your CV, which I will personally review and advise whether I think this would be a suitable next step for you. So I'm going to leave that lingering on the screen so you have chance to navigate to that page, and I hope to hear from many of you. Khalid, Fanny, do you have any final comments to those thinking of applying or just in general to close out the session?
Yeah, mine is to say, just go for it. Go for it. Yeah, that's all. And good luck.
Thank you. Khalid, any words of wisdom?
Well, just to say thank you, Joe, for giving us an opportunity to share our experience with MMPM. And similar to Fanny, I would say apply. There's nothing you lose. Maybe $75 or quit is what you lose. But on the end of that could be an incredible experience at Oxford that I think both Fanny and I had, and nearly everybody that I spoke to in my program really, really valued it. So the value of the program is unparalleled. It's just now a question of whether you're going to make a commitment to it and do it. So good luck, everybody.
Thank you. A wonderful way to end the session. Thank you so much again to both of you and to everyone that has taken their time to join the session. I'm sending my best wishes from what is now unfortunately a rainy Oxford to wherever you are in the world. And I really sincerely hope to speak with many of you soon, and who knows, even welcome you through the doors of Side Business School as an Oxonian. But thank you so much to everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.